Blog Talk Radio.
Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. This is Choppin It Up, brought to you by the Marching Podcast and Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Beard, and I'm happy to be of service to you today. Today is August 19th, 2012, 3 o'clock on the West Coast, 6 o'clock on the East Coast. And today we chop it up with Christine Ngeo Katzman. Christine is the CEO and publisher of Halftime Magazine. I found Christine online, actually through the fifth quarter. Someone posted a link to an article that showcased the Honda Battle of the Bands, and the pictures were from Halftime Magazine. I read through some of the articles and found the contact information and contacted Christine. She called me back, and the rest is history. So please call in and talk to Christine today at 718-664-6025. You can email the show, marchingpodcast@gmail.com, or tweet us at marchingpodcast. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Christine Katzman. How you doing, Christine?
I'm very good. Thank you, Joe, for inviting me to the Marching Podcast. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the call back. I appreciate the couple of conversations we had. But I really enjoyed reading your magazine and really wanted to highlight what you're doing in the industry. So let's get right into it. Could you tell us about your music and your marching band experience?
Sure. As far as music goes, I actually started playing piano when I was 5 and played all the way through high school. And I started on a wind instrument, the flute, in 3rd grade, before even the elementary school would have started us. I had an older brother who played saxophone, and so it was kind of an easy transition to also pick up an instrument and have the same teacher who, the teacher of his, taught every wind instrument. So it was great. And then I played flute all the way probably through college. And I also, throughout those times, have picked up a couple of other instruments. I played the saxophone in concert band one season, and I tried to learn the oboe and things like that. In our high school, I went to a high school in Cold Spring Harbor, New York, which is on Long Island, and it was a very small school, about 100 kids per class.
Wow.
So our high school had 400 kids. We didn't have a marching band. We did play in pep band. We did play at football games as a pep band. We wore we wore maroon blazers kind of as our uniform, and we played in the stands. So that was kind of my first pep band experience. I never really considered that marching band or anything like that. And when I went to Northwestern as a journalism student, I, on a whim, decided to sign up for the marching band. And it was a really, really great experience. The Big Ten bands are very well respected. We played a new show every week, and we just had a really good time. I had a wonderful band director, Dr. Stephen Peterson, and it was just a really wonderful experience to be at. But there I was. I didn't even know how important it was to go to band camp, so I skipped band camp. My dad had already arranged the flights to Northwestern to come out with me for orientation. And I show up on the first day of real practice after band camp and had no idea how to march 8 to 5. I had no idea any of the commands at all. And there I was in block formation trying to march. And they are announcing all the doing all the commands, and I was just no clue, turning around in the wrong spots. And so luckily some people pulled me out of the line, like some drum majors, and took about 5 of us, I think, who weren't able to go to band camp, and kind of started from the very, very beginning. And it was just really great to be a part of a big team experience like that. I actually had also not really ever been part of a team sport, So this was a great team activity where we got to be involved in a bigger activity, than ourselves.
Exactly. Well, that's great. That's actually really cool. You're chopping it up with Christine Katzman here on the Marching Podcast, brought to you by the Marching Podcast and Blog Talk Radio. Thanks for listening. You can give her a call at 718-664-6025. That's 718-664-6025. So you went to Northwestern. That's actually really cool because you guys played the Michigans, the Ohio State. I know there's huge history music-wise coming from University of Michigan. I know that Jackson State, where I went to college, got a lot of their patterns of motion actually from the musicianship there at University of Michigan. And I think that it's spread across college bands in general. I get like the drill part of the halftime show. So did you guys battle, I guess, University of Michigan and Ohio State? Were those some pretty intense battles?
Well, Northwestern's big sports rivalry is with Illinois, kind of crosstown rivals. As far as the bands go, we weren't really rivals. Most of the Big Ten bands were pretty friendly with each other, and we did travel to one away game a year. My sophomore year, I went to Michigan. So speaking of Michigan, it was pretty amazing to be, at that stadium with their crowd. And that happened to be the year that our team did really, really, really well and ended up at the Rose Bowl that year. And but everybody in the Michigan band really welcomed us. We got together as sections and kind of played for each other. And then I remember the following year, there was a band that came, I think it might have been Purdue. They visited us. And then after the game, we actually got together and performed cadences for each other and listened to some of their stand tunes and things like that. And my section, which was the flutes, we were always big on candy, and we passed around candy within our section, and we would, definitely pass around candy with the visiting team and things like that. So, or the visiting band, I should say, the visiting flutes. So it was more of a very friendly situation, learning from each other and things like that.
That's really cool because that's really interesting because the friendly part definitely from Jackson State was not until after the game. There was always the common fraternities. We had KK Psi. Well, actually, they weren't KK Psi at Jackson State when I was there, but KK Psi is the National Band Fraternity. So a lot of band organizations have them. But during the game, it was definitely, kill the other team or kill the other band. It was definitely that mentality until after everyone broke the lines. Your band would usually march out. Then after that, usually people would talk, and sometimes if people would know where the band, like where they would stay in the hotel, people would visit them and talk to the other band directors. But that's really cool.
I think even during the games, we were pretty friendly as a band to each other. Our band directors wouldn't really play over the other band. We would kind of wait to listen to their band to end their song, and then we would start, or vice versa. So I think the band directors were all pretty friendly with each other.
Yeah, that's great. That's a difference. I was definitely really excited to hear about when we first talked. So after, not after, I guess during your tenure there at Northwestern, what did you decide to major in?
I majored in journalism. I had wanted to be a writer since I was in 6th grade. And really it was more novels and things like that, short stories, and I figured journalism would be a great career, especially at the time. Journalism was a great career path, and Northwestern had a top, still does. It has a top journalism program, particularly on the print side, and now the broadcast is fantastic as well. but I wanted to major on the print side of journalism and went into the program there. In my magazine editing class, actually, which was my junior year. Actually, truthfully, I graduated in 3 years, so my junior and senior year were kind of combined, so it's kind of confusing. But so my junior/senior year, I took magazine editing, and there we had to come up with an idea for a magazine. And it was a team project, and we brainstormed various ideas, and one of my ideas that came up was to do something for a marching band. I had always thought, coming from a background where I didn't march until getting to college and, didn't even attend band camp my freshman year, it was a situation where I would have loved to have a magazine to kind of learn from other bands or to learn marching techniques or, just to have some camaraderie among schools. And so that was an idea I came up with for that class. I ended up pursuing that on the side because my team chose to do our project on a kind of jewelry magazine, actually. Jewelry couture magazine was our group project. And the project was, we had to come up with the name of the magazine, all of the department pieces, sample stories, who the audience would be, what the circulation distribution strategy was going to be, what kind of advertisers were going to be in it. So basically came up with a business plan.
Wow.
For a magazine. And so after we did that for the class, I went ahead and did that for Halftime Magazine. And my professor there, Charles Whitaker, was very, very supportive, and I showed him my perspective for Halftime Magazine, and he thought it was a great idea. So I kind of always kept that in my back pocket and did everything in my career over the next 10 years as stepping stones to get to launch Halftime Magazine.
Wow, 10 years. Wow,
it took me 10 years from when I wrote that prospectus to actually launching it.
Wow, so sixth grade, you knew you wanted to be a writer. And I guess the marching band aspect, did you want to be like an author for books, or what type of journalist did you think that you wanted to be?
Sure, I wanted to be a magazine journalist. I never felt like I wanted to be an ambulance chaser, which is kind of the newspaper side of things.
Right.
And I liked the ability to tell stories. And, with magazines, you're telling real stories rather than, like in fiction, it's short stories, but the concept is similar. My favorite start of a magazine article would be like an anecdotal lead, which is kind of like telling the story, telling someone's story. So that I was always more drawn to magazine writing. So that's the kind of journalism I was drawn to. And then when I finished Northwestern, I, really didn't have any money to start a magazine. And so I kind of took these steps to learn more about the industry, to learn more about the magazine industry and business in general. I worked for Crane Communications, which is a very well-known company in the Chicago area. They actually have branches all over the United States, but they're known for like business-to-business magazines. And the one I wrote for was Modern Healthcare. It's a healthcare professional magazine, and I wrote there for a while, and then I did some freelancing. And then what really was helpful was that I worked for a company called Imagination Publishing. It's a custom publishing company, and they launched magazines all the time. In fact, actually, I did intern for them while I was still at Northwestern, and then eventually came back to work for them as a full-time staff. And while I was at Imagination, I had the opportunity to launch a lot of magazines from the editorial standpoint. So I was always like the editorial brainstormer and coming up with like the departments and coming up with the, even help come up with some titles and things like that. And I got to help pitch a magazine for Guitar Center, which actually did come to fruition. They had, I think, 1 year of that magazine for Guitar Center. And then I decided to move into a business standpoint and work for a kind of a manufacturing telecommunications firm just to get a little bit more business experience outside of publishing. Publishing is very, I think, unique, and I, as an editorial person, I didn't really see the business side of things. So I went to this other type of company in order to learn some marketing and business, get some marketing and business experience. Then I went back to business school, wrote my full business plan, for Halftime Magazine, or for our eventual company, which is called Muse Media LLC, which included all the finance side of things, which I didn't write in undergrad, like all the financial aspects and the forecasting and things like that.
Right.
And got to know a ton of people during business school who helped support the idea and who helped us with the launching point. I was able to intern as a grad student, a business school student, with Yamaha Corporation of America in the winds department. And we had a lot of opportunities to interact with marching bands and drum corps that were artists of Yamaha. And then my Yamaha boss at the time, he also, and everybody actually at Yamaha, helped introduce me to basically all of their partners in the industry and all of even their competitors in the industry, kind of who now has become my advertisers and sponsors. So it's kind of been a huge stepping stone for the past. I took all these steps in 10 years to be able to launch my business.
That's outstanding. 718-664-6025, 718-664-6025. You're chopping it up with Christine Katzman here on the Marching Podcast and Blog Talk Radio. I'm glad you went right into that, because that was my next question. Like, in those 10 years, like, what was your first stepping stone? It's just unbelievable the experience you had, and just kind of, how you were able to use in education. And I really hope that, young people out there really understand that, you got this experience, being in school, doing something that you loved. So how old were you? Like,
when I launched the business, I was 30. So the business has just celebrated its 5th anniversary, actually. So we feel very proud of this occasion.
That's outstanding. So really, like 19 or 20, that's when the idea was born. Really.
Right.
Yes, that's outstanding. I definitely want young people to understand that, your dream, and, it just takes hard work. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So was there any obstacles in getting Halftime Mag started?
Well, I think once I made the commitment to start, I didn't seem to have too many obstacles. There's been ups and downs along the way, of course, just like starting any other business. But people were very receptive to the idea of having a marching band magazine. The magazine industry at the time was doing wonderful, or I shouldn't say it was doing wonderful, but it's hit a major downturn since then. It was some aspects of the magazine publishing industry wasn't doing as well back then, but these niche magazines were doing really, really well. Of course, the year after I launched in 1997, and 1998, 1999 was the financial downturn, so that was a major obstacle. The actual launching in 97 was fantastic, coming right out of business school, and then one of the best pieces of advice that I received from my entrepreneurship mentor was that you should go out there and meet as many people as you can. In fact, he made us write down a list of 100 people that we met in the process of creating our business plan. And I must say that I probably know hundreds of people since I've started the business, people I would have never, ever, ever met or come in contact with, maybe even thousands of people since then. So that was a very good, important piece of advice, just to go out there and talk to people in the industry and, talk to people and meet as many people as you can. And in 97, what we did was we pretty much launched the business with a huge splash. Drum Corps International was out on the West Coast for the first time ever. They did their championship weekend in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl, and it was just a huge, huge event. And we had a 30-foot banner out on the backfield, and it was maroon, and it was huge and gigantic, and everybody noticed, and we had a booth out in the exhibit area, and people came, I think hundreds of people came up to me and subscribed over that weekend. So I would say right away we partnered with Drum Corps International and then tried to partner with a variety of other national marching band circuits. I think probably U.S. Scholastic Band Association, which is now known as U.S. Bands, was our second partnership, and then we partnered with Music for All, which hosts the Bands of America Grand Nationals. Since then, in the 5 years, we've partnered. We believe that every marching unit has a story. So what we've done is basically have tried to partner with every national and regional circuit available out there, and then I'm now also reaching out to state associations and even individual band competitions to partner with them.
Yeah.
So our belief is that every group, every band, every guard, every indoor percussion group, every corps, every all-age group has a story. And we're the only print magazine that covers all of those activities, and the only print magazine that covers college marching band, including the HBCU activity.
That's very, very, very true, and that's how I got. How I met you, just like you're talking about. You met thousands of people. That's how we met. It was on the fifth quarter, which is a forum, and you had a spread from this past year from pictures, and someone had a link there. You talked about everyone has a story, and that's actually in your mission statement. It's really, really powerful. Why do you feel it is important to share those things with everyone?
When I first was launching Halftime, we did a number of focus groups, and some of the people were saying, they would like to know more about other bands, but sometimes rivalries kind of get in the way, or they're just kind of in their own silo and do what they do. Their marching band does what it does, and, it's tradition and things like that. Having Halftime Magazine is a great neutral source to be able to learn about other groups without having any, negative ramifications, or, with only positive ramifications can you have by learning about them that way. In fact, in celebrating our 5th anniversary, we put together a story on, the top 5 best stories that we've written, and one of them was kind of a surprise. We did a story on band camp strategies, and, at Northwestern, what we used to do, we had a 1-week band camp 1 week before freshman student orientation started. I think it's a little different now. I think they might be a little bit longer band camp. And we went away. We went to Wisconsin to some location. So that's kind of what I knew. But when we did the story, we ended up finding out that, a lot of bands start way in the early summer, meet once a week for the entire summer, and then have an intensive, 2-week program, or they meet on campus, and then they have just various types of ways of hosting band camp. And I got a lot of feedback from band directors and even some students that were like, wow, I didn't know other bands did it this differently, and I'm going to take some of the ideas from this band that you wrote about and incorporate it into my band. So band directors kind of need a way of learning about other strategies too, as well as students, just to hear this. So for band directors, it's more like learning about the different strategies, and for students, it's kind of fun to hear about the different anecdotes and different ways that other bands do things.
I think that that's really important. And then I was reading more in the magazine, and it seemed that there was more outside of marching bands. So the target audience really for Halftime isn't strictly on marching bands, because I saw there's coming in the future, there's a Sing, Sing, Sing. Is that going to be a part of Halftime, or is that going to be just a separate publication?
Oh, no, that is separate. We launched our company as a more general company. It's News Media LLC is a media entertainment company for student performing artists groups, and that includes we started with marching bands and marching arts because that was what I knew, that was what I was passionate about. But the mission of the company is to have similar types of publications and media in terms of video broadcast, or I was envisioning even having interactive games or events and things like that for all types of student performing type groups. So Sing 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 is for choral groups. That's kind of our second endeavor into it, and we launched that just this past just a month or two ago. for choral groups. And we also have plans in the future to look at drama and to look at orchestra and things like that. So it's just our mission is to educate, entertain, and inspire. We want to keep people involved in the arts because of all the wonderful benefits of being in the arts as a student and in future life. And so we want to start with young. The original mission is the younger people. But what we found through Halftime is that a lot of people throughout the ages of in the marching arts enjoy the magazine. The directors and the fans and the alumni of these groups kind of all enjoy keeping in touch with the marching arts. So we launched Sing, Sing, Sing because now I live in Cincinnati, and the World Choir Games came here for the first time for the first time in North America. They chose Cincinnati. This is kind of like the Olympics of choir. And all these groups from all around the country came to perform here. There was kids, and there was adults, and there were mixed age, and there was like 26 categories, I believe, and I can't remember how many countries, but a lot of different countries all came to Cincinnati to sing. And since it was always on the back of our mind to launch additional types of magazines for different types of performing groups, we decided it was a really wonderful activity a wonderful time to launch this choral magazine because it was right in our backyard. Kind of similar to what we did with Halftime when, I used to live in LA and the, drum corps came right to my backyard to Pasadena.
Right.
And so this is the same exact thing that happened for the choir market. So we launched Sing, Sing, Sing. It has the same mission, educate, entertain, and inspire. We wrote about the World Choir Games, and we wrote about the, I think the International Collegiate A Cappella Competition, and we wrote some technique tips on stage, how to overcome stage fright and how to do costuming for male groups. We did a profile of a group, and it was definitely. Oh, we also did a Q&A with Max Adler, who was one of the cast members of Glee. So it was a really fun magazine to launch. We launched it in a little bit of a different distribution method. We're using a system called MagCloud, where you can print it on demand or order a digital download copy. So the digital download of Sing, Sing, Sing is only $1.
Wow.
So hope everybody goes out there to find it on MagCloud if there's any singers out there listening. Halftime Magazine, we had a full-out distribution program where, like I said, we're partnering with a lot of circuits and going to the shows, and we had we distribute 10,000 copies of Halftime Magazine through various methods. Now we have subscribers and the partners and events and things like that with Halftime.
That's great. And I think that it's really cool that you're branching out into all areas of the arts, because I'm sure that there's someone out there, just like you said, your experience to music, mine was definitely through the marching bands. My father actually marched in Jackson State's band, so going to those classic games was very important for him. We're getting close to the end, and I definitely wanted to talk to you about more stuff. We'll see how it goes in the future. How can the listener get involved and help out with Halftime Magazine, and where can the listener go to get and start to subscribe to Halftime Magazine?
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you asking that. Our website is halftimemag.com, halftimemag.com. And that's where you can go subscribe. And we have individual subscriptions for $14.95. And probably the best of all is that we have group subscriptions, which are only $1 per person per year. So if you are a band director out there, or a instructor or director of any of these different kinds of marching groups, you can get Halftime Magazine for $1 for each of your participants. And so if you have 100 people in your band, it's only $100 for the entire year. You get 100 copies of every issue mailed to you. It's just a fantastic price because we want everybody to be able to benefit from Halftime Magazine. Also, I guess people can get involved by, contacting me to be a partner or a sponsor or an advertiser A lot of our partnerships are they're like cross-promotional marketing types of opportunities. And then if you want to advertise in Halftime Magazine, we would love to hear from you, or, sponsor us in other ways.
Well, that's great. That's all the time we have for the show today. We always want to thank God first and foremost. We want to thank you, Mrs. Christine Katzman and Halftime Magazine. We wish you much success. Check out the website at themarchingpodcast.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Thanks to you for listening. And remember, the eye is a better pupil than the ear, more willing. Advice may be misleading, but examples are always clear. See you next time.
Thank you very much.